by halves. So like half is going to, the camera's going to be pointing at you and half at them.
It's just raging. Cromwell again.
As long as you got the express written consent of the College Bowl.
What's that?
So as long as you got the express written consent of the College Bowl Corporation.
The who? Okay, you guys ready for this?
Yeah, right.
Here comes toss-up 1. In the analysis of stock prices, the upper and lower Bollinger Bands are used to visualize this measure for security. Chebyshev's inequality places a 1 over k square upper bound on the proportion of observations that have a k-tuple value for this quantity. The correlation of variables x and y is defined as the covariance of x and y divided by the products of these values for x and y. T and z scores signify multiples.
Correlation?
No. T and z scores signify multiples of this value for an observation, and this quantity is the product. This quantity is the square root of the expected value of the square of the distribution minus the mean. For a Gaussian, 2 times the square root of this quantity. 2 times the square root of the quantity, 2 times the natural log of 2 times this quantity equals the full width at half max. 10 points. Identify this quantity, which describes the degree to which a distribution is spread out. That's right.
Yeah.
Here's a bonus for you. During a vote on Charles Warren's nomination for Attorney General, this man made a mad dash across Washington in a taxi cab to break the tie, becoming the subject of a parody of Paul Revere's ride. For 10 points each. Name this vice president, the deviser of a namesake plan following World War I, whose scathing inaugural speech against the rules of the Senate was one of the many reasons that his superior, Calvin Coolidge, hated him.
He was vice president, so young.
Dawes. When Coolidge decided not to run in 1928, the Republicans nominated Herbert Hoover for president and this Kansas senator for vice president. He was the first man with significant Native American heritage to serve as VP. No, it's Charles Curtis. In 1928, the Democrats paired Al Smith with this Arkansas senator, known alternately as Scrappy Joe, the fightingest man in the Senate, and the pugilist senator for his legendary temper in an incident in which he clocked a surgeon on a golf course. He shepherded much legislation through the Senate as FDR's New Deal marshal.
Joe Bagel.
You got the Joe part right. It's Joe Robinson, or Joseph Robinson. Let's see, I'm sure he would prefer to be called. Yeah, you got nothing. Toss-up 2. During his first major command, this general was defeated at the Battle of Bound Brook. This general was once exchanged for William Phillips after being captured. During one battle, this general employed the French engineer Jean-Baptiste de la Moye, who informed him that his fortifications would not hold. While defending a state governed by John Rutledge, this general unsuccessfully petitioned the legislature to arm blacks. That petition was rejected, forcing this man to surrender to Henry Clinton and thereby give the British control of Charleston. Later, this man collaborated with... that's right. This collection includes several sketches of Provence, including one in which Father Gaucher brews liquor to save a monastery from financial ruin, but becomes a ribald drunkard in the process. For 10 points each, name this collection, which includes short stories such as The Old Couple and Monsieur Seguin's Goat. The fuck is it? No, it's Letters from My Windmill. Letters from My Windmill was written by this French naturalist of Tartarin de Tarascon. Georges Bizet composed incidental music to his play L'Arlésienne. It's Alphonse Daudet. Daudet's son Lucien had an affair with this novelist who wrote about the Guermantes and Swann families in his 7-volume masterpiece, In Search of Lost Time.
Proust.
That's right. 10 points. Toss-up 3. This poem's speaker encounters a symbol of the utmost that we know, both of ourselves and of the universe, when he sees the written story of a blind beggar's life tied around the beggar's neck. Street plays inspire an extended digression about the Maid of Buttermere in this poem, which contains 2 sections on imagination and taste. It claims that peace and repose must come from the pure source, or they will by man be sought in vain, in a section that describes a shepherd-guided moonlit journey from Bethgeller's huts to the heights of Snowdon. It's 4. Yes. Show that you're the best 12-year-old girl in Quiz Bowl by answering these questions on horses and mythology for 10 points each. This 8-legged mount of Odin was born after Loki assumed the form of a mare to prevent the stallion Svadilfari. I think it's, yeah, Svadilfari, I think, from hauling stones to build the walls of Asgard. These twin deities are sometimes called Nasatyas or Noseborn, referring to an episode in which their father Surya impregnated their mother Saranyu through her nostrils while she was in the form of a mare. These deities who cured Siyavna's blindness were primarily known as healers. Yes. These two horses pull the chariot belonging to Sol. They are kept cool by the shield of Svalin.
No, wait, no, that's not Greek. No, Xanthus and Mammoth.
I have no idea what's going on there.
I'm gonna guess that. Okay, wait. Xanthus and Mammoth.
No, it's Arvok and Alsvid.
Okay.
This is some kind of like maybe early Slavic myth or something. I have no idea.
That's
Toss up 4. Pauline Kael compared this film to Joyce's Ulysses in her advanced review of its 3-hour rough cut. One of the main characters in this film relays how she memorized a record for a salesman at a Frigidaire store. Early in this film, an artist sings, "We must be doing something right to last 200 years." Like its director's earlier film, Thieves Like Us, its screenplay was written by Joan Tewksbury. Geraldine Chaplin plays the BBC reporter Opal in this film, which opens with a van advertising the never-seen replacement party candidate Hal Philip Walker driving through the title location. It culminates with a concert at the Parthenon where Ronnie Blakely's Barbara Jean is shot during a performance with Halvin Hamilton. For 10 points, name this 1975 Robert Altman film that partially chronicles the country music scene in the title Southern City. 5.
Nashville.
Okay.
There you go.
I was gonna guess that.
Oh, that Parthenon.
Yeah, that
Okay. The Parthenon.
Artists associated with this movement include Elsie Driggs and Louis Lozowick for 10 points each. Identify this early 20th century artistic movement, whose members included the photographer Charles Sheeler. It focused on portraying industrial subjects with simple shapes and clear outlines.
What is this one like spiraling and shit? Go for it. Realism.
No, this is precisionism, or Cubist realism.
That's a thing.
This precisionist painted a number of Cubist watercolor still lifes, but is most famous for My Egypt and I Saw the Figure 5 in Gold.
Demuth.
Another precisionist, Joseph Stella, painted many futuristic depictions of this New York City landmark. Walter Evans began photographing it extensively in 1929.
So,
We're seeing that.
It's like a.
Special Liberty? Special Liberty?
Answer.
Special Liberty.
No, it's the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, right.
You got 10 points.
So many landmarks in that fucking city.
Lots of city. Lots of landmarks. Lots of city, Charles. Toss of 5. Contrary to his contemporaries, this social scientist argued that Patoli emerged from Pachisi due to the interaction between Asiatic and early American peoples. Galton's problem pointed out the flaws in his methodology, and further attacks on his position were made in Boas's essay, The Limitation of the Comparative Method of Anthropology. He referred to cultural traits associated together with statistical significance as adhesions. This thinker used the belief in God as an example of the vestiges of past beliefs in modern societies, which he called survivals. Yeah. Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
Edward Tyler. These structures are the site of the seismically active Wadati-Benioff zones, and it was once theorized that the melting of the crust in these structures gives rise to the so-called arc magmas. For 10 points each, name these areas in which one tectonic plate slides under another. Yes. Colder and thicker parts of tectonic plates are theorized to sink because of the temperature differential by this mechanism, which is contrasted with the rigid push mechanism. Oh, it's called slab pull. Eclogite is generally produced in the subduction zones from basalt or this other mafic igneous rock, which, like basalt, is primarily composed of plagioclase, feldspar, and pyroxene. Unlike basalt, it is made up of coarse grains. It's gabbro.
Yeah.
So you got 10 points. Toss up 6. A poet with this surname described how the sons of Polacs nursing long beers on Titans,ville and Negroes in the blast furnace at Benwood become suicidally beautiful and gallop terribly against each other's bodies in a poem set in the Shreve High football stadium. Another poem by an author with this surname describes a speaker who notices a bronze butterfly and a chicken hawk looking for home before candidly admitting, "I have wasted my life." That author with the surname wrote A Blessing and Lying in a Hammock at William Duffy's Farm in Pine Island, Minnesota, as well as The Branch Will Not Break. In addition to the poet poet James, another author with this last name, wrote the short story Big Boy Leaves Home, as well as a novel whose protagonist kills Bessie Mears, and is represented, that's 4 over here.
Right.
That's correct. Come on, guys. James Wright. I have a notice. Bonus. This city is home to a street named for the physician Oscar Freire, who developed the first morgue here, 10 points each. Named this city home to the largest Japanese community outside of Japan. It also happens to be the largest city in Brazil. That's right. The 3 richest states in in Brazil are Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and this state, second most populous. It is also located in the southeast region, and its capital is Belo Horizonte. The Caxambu Spa is in this state. No, it's Minas Gerais. This term, which is used in Brazil to designate hillbillies, also names a particular type of accent in the Sao Paulo state. It also names the unique folk music of Sao Paulo.
Yeah, what are the slums called?
It's not. No. It's called Caipira. So you get 10 points. All right. Toss-up 7. As a young man, this politician wrote the pamphlet Remember Trafalgar Square to protest the massacre of pro-Irish protesters in 1877. Later, this man merged his political party with one founded by Keir Hardie, the ILP. This man's health minister introduced the Wheatley Act, which subsidized the construction of low-income housing. This man's chancellor of the Exchequer was Philip Snowden, and his first government was hurt by a failure to prosecute the activist J.R. Campbell. Oswald Mosley served as this man's chancellor 3. That's right. Here's your bonus. This character beats his son Nwoye after the latter converts to Christianity and takes the name Isaac for 10 points each. Identify this Umofian clan leader who hangs himself in despair after killing a colonial messenger in Chinua Achebe's novel Things Fall Apart. That's right. Okonkwo's favorite among his children is this daughter of Akwefi, the only one of her children to survive past infancy.
Yeah, what's her? It's Kwema? Kwe something?
Answer?
Kwema.
It's Azima. Things Fall Apart ends with the district commissioner musing about the book he plans to write, which he gives this arrogant title.
Holy crap! What the fake title? Holy crap! I feel this white supremacy here.
It's like the pacification of tribes in the Upper Volga.
No. You're close. You're close. It's the pacification of the primitive tribes of the Lower Niger.
Oh.
You had the right idea, though.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
All right, you got 10 points. Toss up 8. A fructose-based catalyst can be used for an asymmetric synthesis of these compounds in a reaction named for She. The SQ-Mo protein gives squalene this functionality in the rate-limiting step of the sterol biosynthesis pathway. A titanium-based catalyst is used along with diethyl tartarate to synthesize these compounds in another reaction. Many syntheses of these compounds proceed via a spirotransition state. These compounds react with water to yield vicinal diols. Reacting alkenes with chlorine and water and then with a base yields this functionality via a halohydrin intermediate, and reacting alkenes with peroxy acids like MCPBA yields these compounds in a concerted reaction which proceeds via a butterfly mechanism. In the presence of an acid catalyst, they are readily catalyzed to glycols due to their high level of ring strain. For 10 points, name these compounds synthesized in the Sharpless reaction, cyclic ethers that are often used as... that's 4. No. Cyclic ethers that are often used as adhesives. No, these are epoxides. Okay. Toss up 9. One of this man's daughters was put to death alongside her son Munipus when a prophecy of Aesacus was determined by royal fiat to refer to them. Homer related the story of this man's affair with the nymph Calliope, which produced his illegitimate son Bucolion. One of his sons saved his own life by giving his potential murderer a golden veil, an act which led that son led that son of this man to adopt a name meaning to buy to replace his old name, Podarces. This man, along with almost all of his family, was slaughtered after he refused to give several divine horses to Heracles, who in exchange had saved this man's daughter Hesione from a sea monster. That monster, that's 2 over here. All right, that's time. -5. That monster was sent to exact payment for another of this man's broken promises, namely his refusal to reward Apollo and Poseidon for building the walls of his city. 10 points identify the son of Ilus, who preceded his own son Priam as king of Troy. That's right. This class of molecules differs from glycerophospholipids and galactolipids in that they lack glycerol, and these molecules contain a similarly named long-chain amino alcohol for 10 points each. Name this class of molecules, the simplest one of which is ceramide. The carbohydrate moieties of some of these molecules determine human blood types. Answer. Okay, these are sphingolipids. A certain class of sphingolipids which have a phosphocholine or phosphoethanolamine as their polar head are particularly abundant in this material, which insulates neural axons. It is produced by Schwann cells. That's right. These sphingolipids have sialic acid residues at their termini and oligosaccharides at their heads. Tay-Sachs disease occurs when one of these molecules is not broken down and accumulates in neurons. Answer. These are called gangliosides. You get 10 points from my own. Toss up 10, after which we'll have a score check. Cornelius Vanderbilt bought this painting from A.T. Stewart and donated it to the Met. A group of onlookers stand and sit on a grassy hillside between 2 trees at the right of this work, which is compositionally similar to its artist's first success, Plowing in the Nivernais. 2 men in coveralls stand at its left, while a man in an unbuttoned collar strides towards its center. The central dome of the Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital is visible in the left background of this painting, whose setting is the dirty street of a tree-lined Paris boulevard. In its central scene, 2 white animals walk away from the viewer, while a man raises a whip in an effort to control 2 bucking stallions. 10 points name this gigantic painting of a market selling the title Animals. 4. Sorry. Rosa Bonheur. This king came to power after the murder of his older brother, Edward Martyr, for 10 points each. Name this English king most famous for ordering the St. Brice's Day massacre against the Danes. Ethelred wanted to kill some Danes because he was frustrated having to pay the Danegeld, which was forced upon him after the Danes won this battle against the Anglo-Saxon general Berthnoth. Yeah. Most legislation passed during Ethelred's reign appears to have been written by this influential Archbishop of York, who may have been the real power behind the throne during Ethelred's reign. Answer? No, it's Wulfstan. You got 20 points. All right. That was toss of 10, so let's have a score check.
Michigan 105, Ohio State 70. Played super best.
You guys included the worst team at this turn. I don't know what to say. Shame to all of you. All right, you guys ready for toss up 11?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Just wait.
Shh. Shut up. Near the beginning of one of this author's novels, a missionary's wife writes, "These are not decent people," beneath a sketch of nurses washing a dead woman's body. The title character of that novel by this author tricks a girl who earlier adopted the name Margaret Cadmore into turning away from Maleka and marrying him. In another of this author's novels, characters like Cello and Dan Malomo appear in the hallucinations of the writer Elizabeth, whose exile from her home country mirrors this author's own experiences. She penned a novel in which the British agriculturalist Gilbert Balfour and the protagonist Makia Maseko attempt to modernize the village of Gole Mamidi. Her hometown of, that's 3 over here. That's right.
Yeah.
Who's it?
Bessie had spots. Yeah. Yes.
This name was given to the second movement of HWV 331, a concerto in F, that reworks the brass heavy original movement identified by this name. For 10 points each, identify the second movement of a suite in D major, whose name indicates that it should be played like a traditional British sailor's dance.
So it's like, it's the...
That's right. The Alla Hornpipe movement appears in the second of these three suites by Georg Friedrich Handel, composed for the performances on the royal barge of George I.
Water music.
The fifth movement of the second water music suite, like the seventh movement of the first suite, is in the form of this French-Spanish dance, which is similar to the gavotte.
I was thinking that. I was gonna say gavotte.
I was gonna say that. I was like, oh,
That's brave.
Right, yeah, that's great.
So you got 20 points there. Toss up 12. In the Diamonds Affair, this leader gave diamonds to the French minister Valéry Giscard d'Estaing while he morosely lamented losing his adopted father after Charles de Gaulle's death. Time magazine reported this leader slashed his upstart minister Alexandre Banza with a razor in front of his cabinet before executing him. He came to power after killing security chief Jean Izamo and defeating incumbent David Dacko. That's 4 over here.
awesome.
That's right. You get 10 points. This author collaborated with William Rowley on the comedy A Cure for a Cuckold for 10 points each, named this Jacobean playwright of the tragedies The White Devil and The Duchess of Malfi.
Oh, it's
Webster.
This character is forced to spy on the Duchess of Malfi by Ferdinand and the Cardinal, and stabs them both at the end of the play. He discovers that the Duchess is pregnant by feeding her apricots, which induce her to go into labor.
Italian names.
All right, 17th century science.
Federico.
His name is Basola. This poet praises Webster as Shakespeare's right arm in The Age of Shakespeare. He never finished his novel Lesbia Brandon, and included his novels The Leper, Dolores, and The Triumph of Time in his collection Poems and Ballads.
Oh, that sounds familiar. Swinburne.
That's right.
Oh, nice.
20 points.
Pull that out of your ass.
Oh man. 13. This composer wrote 2 pieces for piano for 6 hands, the 3 amateurs and brilliant rondo and a favorite minuet of C. Kreutzer. He wrote both the 4th variation and the coda for the Vaterlandischer Künstlerverein, a project, and the 5th variation of the Hexameron, a collaboration with one of his students, a piece called The Indefatigable, 2 collections subtitled The Art of Finger Dexterity, and the collection Velocity Studies are among the didactic works that made this composer's name. He was the dedicatee of the Transcendental Etudes and premiered Beethoven's Emperor Concerto. A student of Beethoven and the teacher of Liszt, for 10 points named this Czech-Austrian composer known for his books of piano etudes. Over here?
Clementi?
No. 3. No, it's Carl Czerny. Czerny, or however you want to say that. Huh? Czerny. All right. Toss 14. One experiment conducted to measure the degree of this phenomenon relied on measuring the mass difference between 2 states of the neutral B meson. That was the Babar experiment at SLAC. This phenomenon was confirmed experimentally with the discovery that a long-lived particle had a small 2-pion decay mode rather than only a 3-pion decay mode. This phenomenon was explained theoretically by extension of the Kabibbo mixing angle formalism to 3-quark generations by Kobayashi and Moskawa. This phenomenon may be responsible for the matter-antimatter asymmetry. That's over here.
Neutrino oscillation.
What? What did you say?
Neutrino oscillation.
No. For the matter-antimatter asymmetry in the universe, according to a hypothesis of Sakharov, discovered in the neutral kaon system, thereby helping to resolve the tau-theta puzzle, 10 points identify this phenomenon experimentally verified by Cronin and Fitch, in which the combination of 2 symmetries is broken. Over there.
CP violation?
That's right.
Quantum mechanics is fraud. Hell yeah.
Those are my guess. So I guess 2.
Name the following parables of Christ for 10 points each. Luke 10:25-37 relates this parable in which a priest and a Levite ignore an injured man, but the title Levantine man comes to the man's aid.
This is the Good Samaritan, isn't it? Sure. The Good Samaritan.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Christ tells the reapers to gather the title plants to burn them, but to bring the wheat to Christ's barn in this parable about a field sowed with both wheat and weeds.
Purple green.
It's the parable of the wheat and the tares. The tares is what I needed. 5 of the title figures have brought sufficient oil for their lamps to await the tardy bridegroom. The 5 that have not are thus absent, trying to purchase the oil when the groom arrives.
It's like the Audible song.
I don't think so.
Audible song.
No, it's the parable of the 10 virgins. I don't know what to tell you. Did not write that. Here's toss-up 15. This site is responsible for a ceremony replacing a rope that weighs over a ton that joins the wetted rocks, which are located in a nearby sea. Each October 15th, this site is home to a harvest ritual in which the first crops of the year and a 5-colored silk cloth are offered to a deity. One area at this site is an empty lot with a sacred central pole. The central building of this site consists of a heavy gabled roof with logs crossing the top and is built entirely from cypress. This site consists of an outer and inner complex, the latter of which is called Naiku, and is accessible via the Uji Bridge, and supposedly contains the Sacred Mirror. For 10 points, name this site, whose buildings are torn down and rebuilt on alternating sites every 20 years, the holiest shrine in Shinto. 5.
Like temples to Amaterasu.
I'm going to prompt you.
Tories.
No. The holiest shrine in Shintoism, which is dedicated to Amaterasu.
Sun temples.
No, it's the Issei Shrine.
Yeah, I got no
Okay. Toss up 16. Several years before this event became public knowledge, Glenn Mulcair had been arrested on similar charges and sentenced to 6 months in prison. This event resulted in Andy Coulson resigning from his government position. Sean Hoare leaked information about it to the police and was shortly after found dead, although apparently of natural causes. This event was investigated through Operation Weeding and later the Levson Inquiry. Victims of it included 4. More.
Like the.
Actually, never mind, I can take that. It's the news of the world phone hacking scandal, but I can accept that before.
Yeah. Over rocks. Yeah.
Right, so here's your bonus. Wave-to-energy conversion facilities can produce the syngas that is used as a feedstock for this process, and vertical fixed tube or slurry reactors are often used to carry out this process for 10 points each. Name this process in which hydrocarbons are created from carbon monoxide and hydrogen. No, it's the Fischer-Tropsch process. Catalysts based on this metal are generally avoided in the Fischer-Tropsch reactors because it leads to increased formation of methane. A catalyst consisting of an alloy of this metal and aluminum activated with sodium hydroxide is named for its discoverer, William Rainey. The length of hydrocarbons produced by the Fischer-Tropsch process follows a distribution partially named for this chemist, who also names a who also co-names a theory modeling the thermodynamics of polymer solutions. That's right. You got 20. Toss up. 17. Do you want a score check?
I have 155 for Michigan, 120 for Ohio State.
First game. What's going on? Oh, I see what happened.
Are you missing 17?
No, everything's in place. I was looking for something. Okay. Toss up 17. FXYD proteins serve as tissue-specific modulators of this protein. Like Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome proteins, physical interaction with this protein inhibits SRC kinase, an effect that can be relieved by G-strofanthin and other inotropic agents. Isoforms of this protein that have alpha-1 and 2 units have increased affinity for one of their substrates when acted on by insulin. The cytoplasmic face of this protein is phosphorylated in the second step of its mechanism, which causes an inversion of its conformation. The transport of glucose through GLUT2 from intestinal epithelial cells into the bloodstream is facilitated by the gradient created by this protein, which is potently inhibited by uabane and digoxin. For 10 points, name this integral membrane protein that transports 2 cations of one element.
Sodium potassium.
Yes, I can take that. So a bonus for you. This dynasty's navy lost to Admiral Gang Yisik's forces in a war that contributed to its downfall. It's each named this Chinese dynasty, which was founded by Emperor Wen, and may be best known for having the Grand Canal finished during its administration.
Swift.
Indeed. The Sui dynasty was decisively defeated in a war against this kingdom, which was legendarily founded by Jumong. This kingdom would suffer a defeat of its own in a later conflict against the Tang dynasty and Silla. It's the Goguryeo. This 612 battle fought near the namesake river was the turning point of the Second Goguryeo Sui War, won by Yulji Mundiok, a legendary Goguryeo general. It resulted in over 30,000 Sui casualties. It's the Battle of Salsu River. All right. That's right. So 10 points on the bonus. Toss up 18. One character with this profession becomes jealous of Allende, the blind husband of Maria Iribarne, who that character stalks and kills after coming to believe... Good bless you. Somebody's read The Tunnel.
Read the tunnel? Wow. I'm impressed.
I am too. I haven't read it. Here's your... No, it's not the gas one. It's the... what's his name? Saboteur. Yeah. Bonus for you. Answer the following about psychological experimentation in the United States for 10 points each. In the so-called monster study performed at the University of Iowa, Wendell Johnson attempted to induce this condition in orphans by giving them harsh negative therapy. This is like pretty notorious for being a terrible violation of all ethics.
Sounds like it.
No, it's stuttering. Or,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
From 1932 to 1972, the United States Public Health Service controversially injected poor black men in this Alabama city with syphilis in order to study its effects, and inspired the government to require researchers to obtain the informed consent of their subjects. In 1898, this University of Indiana psychologist performed the first social psychology experiment in which he discovered that bicyclists pedal faster in the presence of another person than by themselves. Nice.
Yeah.
You get 20 points. Toss up 19. Contemporary sources about this man's reign include the text Against the Nations by the Christian writer Arnobius, and a failed rebellion against this man was led by Eugenius of Seleucia. Prior to coming to power, this man commanded forces in Moesia. This emperor's forces were responsible for an incident in Nicomedia called the Rivers of Blood. This emperor made a text called the Acts of Pilate, required reading in schools. This emperor came to power after his predecessor, Carus, was killed by lightning in Persia, and he won the Battle of the Margus River to consolidate his power over rivals Carinus and Numerian. 2. That's right. This man's assassination cited in support of the legend that anyone who illegitimately wears St. Wenceslas's crown will die within a year for 10 points each. Name this leading Nazi and Holocaust architect who was killed by Czech partisans in 1942 while serving as protector of Bohemia and Moravia.
It's like,
That's Reinhard Heydrich. In retaliation for the death of Heydrich, the Nazis completely wiped out this Czech city. The men were all killed, and the women and children all sent to concentration camps.
I don't know. Yeah, Bruno is like where Yana checks from. I mean, that's a city.
Answer? It's Lidice. Another brutal Nazi was this Austrian who served as governor of occupied Poland. He was also governor of the Netherlands while Anne Frank was captured. That's Seyss-Inquart. Toss up the last. Alvin Plantinga's essay on Occam's Way Out discusses the proposition that this man once existed in reference to God's knowledge of the contingent future. John Broome used the example of this man as someone presented with incommensurable choice, and this man is compared to a single individual in the upbuilding discourses that preface another work. This man gained the prescriptive right to be a great man in a work that discusses his hiddenness, rendering him higher than the universal. This man's story is compared to Agnes and the mermaid in that work, which claims that Hegel should have rejected this man as the father of faith. This man's dilemma is central to a work whose... 4. That's right. A discussion of Hume's bundle theory in this man's most famous work introduced the idea of his namesake regress, which he dealt with by suggesting that relations between objects are not independently real for 10 points each. Identify this prominent British idealist whose works include essays on truth. essays on truth and reality, and appearance in reality. Yes. Bradley got posthumously trashed in this 1936 work, whose author criticizes Bradley's statement the absolute enters into, but is itself incapable of evolution and progress, for failing to meet the standards of the verification principle. Yes. Late in Language, Truth, and Logic, Ayer discusses distinguishing a conscious man from an unconscious machine, thus prefiguring this AI test introduced in his namesake's paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence. That's right. That is 30 points, and that is the game.
God damn it.
235 Michigan, 140 Ohio State.
So what is that spot?
I think it's a tunnel by